Well, this week on Frontiers, we focused on rural fire safety protection, and we wanted to have sort of an expanded dialogue about this because you can't say everything that needs to be said. So joining us now, I have Lisa Shield, who is head of the Office of Rural Fire Protection, and we also have our State Fire Marshal, Richard Boothby. So thanks for joining us, and one of the things that we talked about in this project in this program is Project Code Red, and the fact that funding for that dried up about 10 years ago, but villages still have these small firefighting units that are out there. So what kind of help can you offer people if they can't figure out how to get these things to work?
Yeah, so actually that brings up a good point. So there's a lot of them that don't work anymore for a variety of reasons, and some of them can't be fixed. They're really expensive, or the pieces have been strewn around and they're gone. So what my office provides is we do training and support. And what I mean support is we have fire chiefs and firefighters from a variety of communities that are considered rural that call me and ask about prevention, what they can do for prevention, what are other communities doing, how have they solved this problem. And since I've networked with all these communities, I can pass this information back and forth. We also do a Rural Fire Chiefs Conference once a year at the end of September. It's more of the leadership side of things, and that follows the State Fire Conference, so it moves around in the state. And then every summer we've been providing a basic firefighter training in Palmer. And so what we're doing is for fire departments that are registered, we offer them to put in their name and get selected to come in and do training with us for 4 days. And it's really fun. A lot of the pictures I think that you had were from our Palmer fire training.
So Richard, when you've been a rural fire chief, right? Was that out in the valley?
Yes, Willow and Caswell.
And so even though that's on the road system, it seems like one of the biggest challenges in Alaska is having a water supply to fight a fire. And I think you probably go to conferences around the country and describe our situations in Alaska, and people might be puzzled to hear about them. I mean, we are fairly unique.
Yes, very very unique. They still, we talk about snow machines, we talk about four-wheelers as viable equipment to get to fires and to pull water and do those things. So yes, they're always interested in how we do business, especially when you get to the cold and it's like, well, it all freezes, and that's part of it too, yeah.
Well, I think about, for example, the sockeye fire that we had out in Willow a few years ago, and how just a small thing like somebody leaving something burning, basically wiped out a tiny community. And, so even in places on the road system, we still have our struggles in the state responding to fires.
One of the things, and it was brought up earlier in the Hooper Bay fire, but it goes through that very basic training of those departments as when they start to respond, and then they see what they have, to know what they can do, what they can safely do, and then to start calling for assistance or help. Obviously on the road system, it's much easier to call for help.
That's right, because you can get people from, like as in the case of the sockeye fire, there were rural community fire departments that came and assisted. Yes. But you were raised in the Kotzebue area, and what have you learned from that experience?
So interesting.
About fighting fires?
So Kotzebue, we would consider, for training purposes, we would consider Kotzebue semi-urban because they train to that firefighter 1 or above. Selwick and Norvik and Buckland and those communities,
the outlying
communities, those are the communities that we do our training for. And when you're having to cut water, to get water by cutting holes in the ice in the river and dragging it home, how are you going to put out a fire by cutting water from the river? So you can have all of the equipment, you can have all of the training, and then that fire happens and it's 40 below. And then you can't use the equipment anyway, or there's so many challenges that come up. Or maybe it happens when the people that are trained are out hunting or they're out fishing. They're getting their ugruk or something, and they can't put the fire out because they're not there. So prevention is I would say the majority of what my office does is teaching people how to do prevention and kind of think outside the box. You know, what are you going to do if you don't have the money to purchase a fire extinguisher because you can't ship it back to your community? What can you do then in that case? You need to do everything you can to prevent the fire from happening so that you don't rely on an extinguisher that you can't afford. And, you know, a lot of our fires are preventable. I mean, that's the bottom line. And if there's a fire that happens, you know, at your neighbor's house or someone else's house that you have no control over, what are things that you can do to protect your home and to protect your family if your neighbor's house catches on fire?
No, it's a sore subject in a lot of communities, especially on the Kuskokwim right now, because Bethel now has liquor stores, and people in the outlying communities can go and buy liquor. And in Napakiak, of course, that was an alcohol-related fire, or the fatalities are attributed to that. And people in the community of Napakiak were talking about, they're very worried because they're more and more taxed dealing with the alcohol-related issues. But in terms of fires, how big of an issue is alcohol?
I think no matter if you mind, I think it doesn't matter if you're looking at urban areas or rural areas. When someone is under the influence of a mind-altering substance, they're not going to make the best choices. And so if they know that this is something that they choose to do or that someone in their home chooses to do, then they need to take extra precautions when they're not using mind-altering substances. So it might not be alcohol, it might be something else. But if they know that about themselves or their family, they can make those choices to set up a plan and protect it before they're unable to make those good judgment calls, you know, during an incident.
Well, we're just about out of time, but just maybe we'll let you have the last word here. I mean, resources are shrinking across the state for every kind of service. How are you going to cope with that? Especially with such need in rural Alaska.
Yes. Right now, we have, I believe it's going to be a good, strong leadership in DPS that was just
Department
put
of
in.
Public Safety.
The governor has made public safety a priority. So this is one of those opportunities in time that doesn't come very often, where things are kind of lining up and people are really wanting to figure this out. We're bringing more people to the table. We're trying to figure out how to do it with less. More importantly, we're asking how you can help us and how we can help you, and just connect the dots, a lot like what Lisa is doing in rural community. When you go back to that rural community, those smaller communities, that's how they get everything done. And it's not really any different from us, but we can always do much more with more people, more
More
commitment.
collaboration.
Yes.
All right, well, we'll leave it there, and be sure and watch Frontier Sunday, 5 o'clock on KTVA Channel 11 to kind of get a bigger picture of fire safety in Alaska. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Koyana.